Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us at the Humboldt County Voters' Choice Act and Election Administration Plan public hearing. We will be going over the a short informational video as well as the election administration plan for Humboldt County, and we will be reserving public comment, both responses to any written public comment as well as any comment in person or on Zoom for agenda item 4 after we've reviewed the EAP. So to begin, we're going to go ahead and do a short roll call. There's going to be 3 panelists with us this evening. First, we've got Christina Strevey, administration analyst at the Humboldt County Office of Elections. We've got Juan Pablo Cervantes, the Humboldt County Clerk Recorder and Registrar of Voters, as well as myself, Genevieve Cerna, an administrative analyst with the Humboldt County Office of Elections. So to begin with our next agenda item, we're going to go ahead and watch a short video, a short presentation on the Voters' Choice Act and some of its details. All right. So an introduction to the Voters' Choice Act, or VCA, for Humboldt County. So to begin, what is the Voters' Choice Act? So the Voters' Choice Act, or VCA as you might hear it called, expands voters' options for how and when they cast their ballots. Voters will have 3 options to cast a vote. Every actively registered voter in Humboldt County will receive their ballot by mail. To return it, the voter can return the ballot with prepaid postage through the mail. They can return the ballot through a secured ballot drop box that will be placed around Humboldt County, or they can vote in person at any vote center in Humboldt County. Select vote centers will be open for multiple days before and on Election Day, including weekends. What parts of the voting process will stay the same? So all actively registered voters in Humboldt County will automatically have their ballots sent to them directly in the mail, as they have since 2020. You can continue to submit that ballot through the mail, a secured ballot drop box, or vote in person if you wish. And voting will still be a safe, secure, and confidential process available to all eligible voters. What part of the voting process will change? So instead of voting in person for a single day, select vote centers will be open for multiple days before and on Election Day, including weekends. You can visit any vote center in Humboldt County that is convenient to you, and not just a single location that you must report to based upon your home address. And vote centers will have expanded services for voters with disabilities or those who need help voting in multiple languages. So we're going to go ahead and watch a short Voters' Choice Act public service announcement. This video was made by the California Secretary of State in 2018. So we'll go ahead and watch that.
There are exciting improvements coming to elections in the counties of Madera, Napa, Nevada, Sacramento, and San Mateo in 2018. These changes will improve when, where, and how you vote. If you live in one of these counties, all registered voters will receive their ballot in the mail weeks before the election. You have 3 choices for how to vote. First, you can vote by mail. You can mail your completed ballot as soon as you receive it. Your next choice is to drop off your ballot at a designated county drop box. Drop your completed ballot off into secure and clearly marked drop boxes that will be located conveniently across your county. Your third choice is to go to any county vote center and vote in person. These vote centers will resemble a traditional polling place, but offer voters more options. Vote centers will be open up to 11 days in a row, and at each location you can vote in person, drop off your completed vote-by-mail ballot, get help with any questions, get voting materials in multiple languages, vote with an accessible voting machine, and register to vote and vote on the same day. The California Voters' Choice Act will make voting more convenient and accessible in the counties of Madera, Napa, Nevada, Sacramento, and San Mateo in 2018. Learn more at voterschoice.sos.ca.gov.
All right. So that will be the end of our short presentation on the Voters' Choice Act. We'll go ahead and move on to agenda item 3, the review of the election administration plan. To begin, we're going to go ahead and start with the executive summary. Juan, if you wanted to go ahead and get us started.
Thank you, Genevieve. The Humboldt County Office of Elections is committed to ensuring all eligible residents have an opportunity to exercise their right to vote, conducting elections in a fair, accurate, and efficient manner, and providing reliable information and the best possible service to voters, districts, candidates, and other interested parties. In recent years, continuous changes in elections laws and processes and unavailability of fully accessible facilities to serve as polling places have required the Office of Elections to frequently change assigned polling places for voters. In 2020, the impacts of COVID-19 further hindered the Office of Elections from securing fully accessible polling places when schools and churches that had previously been primary polling place facilities could no longer be used. For these reasons, the Office of Election began implementing the Voters' Choice Act voting model in March of 2024. The VCA offers voters more choices on how, when, where, and where they vote, expanding voter services previously offered only at the Office of Elections to vote centers across the county. All registered voters will continue to receive their ballots in the mail. Voters can return their vote by mail ballot at a ballot drop-off box location or vote center. All official Humboldt County Office of Elections ballot drop box locations and vote centers are safe and secure. The VCA voting model expands in-person voting services by enabling voters to visit any vote center across the county to cast a ballot, register to vote, or update voter registration information, receive in-facility and curbside assistance, and use an accessible ballot marking device. For each election, the Office of Elections will provide voters with a minimum of 10 vote centers as follows. 2 vote centers will be open for 10 days prior to an election and on election day, and an additional 8 vote centers will be open for 3 days prior to an election and on election day. The Office of Elections developed an election administration plan providing guidance on how the VCA model will be implemented in Humboldt County. In developing its election administration plan, the Office of Elections collaborated with its Voter Accessibility Advisory Committee and Language Accessibility Advisory Committee to identify community groups with disabilities and language needs, and held consultative meetings with these communities to receive feedback on the election administration plan. The Office of Elections held community meetings and developed a web page to provide the community with information and materials on the VCA process and provide methods for the community to provide feedback.
Section 1, Voter Education and Outreach Plan, Media and Public Service Announcements. Humboldt County Office of Elections use a variety of media and public service announcements in accessible formats to educate the voting age population in Humboldt County, to promote the availability of an accessible vote-by-mail ballot and how to request one. Media will include, but is not limited to, newspapers, radio, television, and social media. Newspaper examples of newspapers that we've contacted are Times Standard, Mad River Union, the North Coast Journal. Online news sources include Lost Coast Outpost, Red-Headed Black Belt. Radio stations are KHUM, KZZH, KHSU, and KMUD. Television, Keat TV, KIEM TV, and Access Humboldt. For social media, the Humboldt County Office of Elections operates both a Facebook and an Instagram. Community presence for voter education. The Humboldt County Office of Elections will educate the voters in Humboldt County by having a community presence. Humboldt County election partners with established community-based organizations to reach their target audiences via newsletters, emailing, social media, and websites and/or events. Types of organizations the Office of Elections will reach out to consist of, but will not be limited to, assisted living facilities, co-housing, fraternal organizations, homeowners associations, local businesses, mobile home parks, nonprofit organizations, political organizations, retirement homes, and schools. These organizations will receive official media for purpose of education and outreach from the Office of Elections. The Office of Elections will put an emphasis on the availability of an accessible vote-by-mail ballot and how to request one with key organizations such as Tri-County Independent Living Center, North Coast Regional Center, Regional Center, and Meals on Wheels. Direct contact with voters. Humboldt County Office of Elections will make 2 direct contact with voters of informing voters of the upcoming election and promoting a toll-free assistance hotline. These contacts will be in addition to other required contacts with voters, including, but not limited to, sample ballots and the delivery of vote-by-mail ballots. 1 direct contact will be mailed to registered voters in December of 2023, informing them that a vote-by-mail ballot will be sent to all registered voters, regardless of vote-by-mail preference. The other mailing will be sent in February of 2024, after ballots have been mailed, informing voters of their voting options at vote centers, if they would prefer to vote in person, and options for returning their vote-by-mail ballots. Our office will add information regarding the Secretary of State's toll-free voter hotline, 800-345-8683 on these mailers. Accessible website and voter resources. Humboldt County Office of Elections website is an accessible website per standards recommended by Section 2053, subsection B, item 4. The Office of Elections will work with the Humboldt County Information Services staff to ensure that all elections information is available in text-based format on an accessible website, humboldtgov.org/elections. Information includes, but will not be limited to, the list of ballot drop-off locations and vote centers with dates and hours that they are open, as well as services available at those vote centers. The website will also include information on accessible voting tools, like remote access vote by mail, as well as translated election education material. Resources for voter education and outreach. Humboldt County Office of Elections will spend the necessary resources on voter education and outreach to ensure that voters are fully informed about the election conducted in ordinance with the Voters' Choice Act. See Appendix 1 for specific information regarding the education and outreach budget for the March 2024 primary election, as well as a comparison of this budget with voter education and outreach budget for the June 2020 primary election.
Section 2, Voter Education and Outreach Plan, Voters with Disabilities. In the spring of 2023, the Humboldt County Office of Elections began focusing the efforts of its Voter Accessibility Advisory Committee, VAC, to organize specifically around outreach and education endeavors of the VCA to the disability community. The committee members were well connected to the disability community and will continue to assist the Office of Elections in developing plans to best serve voters with disabilities in Humboldt County. Consultation with the disability community. On June 29, 2023, the Office of Elections held 2 public consultation meetings to increase accessibility and participation of eligible voters with disabilities. There were in-person and virtual meetings to increase engagement options. And you will find that the minutes for those are following, but we're not going to read through those minutes. You can read through them yourselves. They are on our website as well. Accessible voting materials and services. The Humboldt County Office of Elections website is an accessible website per standards recommended in, again, Section 2053 B, Section 4. The Humboldt County Office of Elections will work with the Humboldt County Information Services staff to ensure that all election information is available in that text-based format on the accessible website, www.humboldtgov.org/elections. Information includes, but will not be limited to, a list of ballot drop box locations and vote centers and the dates and hours that they are open, as well as the services available at vote centers. The Office of Elections is also planning a web page to educate everyone about the accessibility voting tools available. Addressing disparities in voter accessibility and participation. After any election that is conducted in compliance with the Voters' Choice Act, the Humboldt County Office of Elections will make a reasonable effort to address significant disparities in voter accessibility and participation. The Office of Elections will meet with the Humboldt County VAC to address and discuss any issues that ensued during the election. Furthermore, the Office of Elections will survey all vote center staff to evaluate and address any disparities regarding voter accessibility and participation. Voter education and outreach plan. bilingual and non-English language voters. In the spring of 2023, the Humboldt County Office of Elections began focusing the efforts of its Voter Accessibility Advisory Committee to organize specifically around outreach and education endeavors of the VCA to the disability community. The community members are well connected to the disability community and will continue to assist the Office of Elections in developing plans to best serve voters with disabilities in Humboldt County. Consultation with the Spanish language community. On June 28, 2023, the Office of Elections held two consultation meetings to increase accessibility and participation of eligible voters with Spanish and Hmong language voters. And again, the minutes for those meetings are following, and they are available on our website as well. Media and public service announcements. Presently, there is only one Spanish language publication and one Spanish language radio broadcast in Humboldt County. These are can you pronounce it? Linador and Radio Bilingue, and which are two media sources hosted by the local university, Cal Poly Humboldt. Due to their long-standing presence in the community, these sources act as the primary news outlet for Spanish speakers in the county at large. Additionally, we are working with Illuminated Marketing to create social media posts, printed materials, and video content in additional languages.
Section 4, Voter Education and Outreach Plan, Other Underserved Communities. Outreach to student populations. The Office of Elections is seeking options to collaborate with a local nonprofit, Vote Humboldt, and College Corps to engage in student voter outreach. Our first area of collaboration will be outreach to students aged 16 to 18 to pre-register and register to vote and learn more about the Vote Center model. We also make our office available for regular tours with high school students as a part of their civics classes. Additionally, in the past, there has been a polling place at the local community college, College of the Redwoods. At the regional university, Cal Poly Humboldt, voter participation exceeds that of most other colleges according to the 2020 National Study of Learning, Voting, and Engagement. And we have some of that information in a graph, in a figure 1. To leverage the high levels of civic engagement from students at Cal Poly Humboldt, our office has begun exploring options to hold outreach workshops and events on the Cal Poly Humboldt campus by partnering with the campus's Student Life and Event Services and the Student Legal Lounge. There are intentions to host a vote center on the local community college campus, as well as have a ballot drop box at the Cal Poly Humboldt campus to increase voting engagement and ease of voting among students. Outreach to jails. The Humboldt County Office of Elections offers training and materials to liaisons from the Humboldt County Jail every 6 months, in order to ensure jail populations have up-to-date and accurate information when voting. Materials include affidavits, eligibility information, and materials to train other jail staff on the proper completion of registration. Community events. The Humboldt County Office of Elections is taking part in several community events to reach voters at large. These events include Black Humboldt's Juneteenth celebration, the City of Eureka's 4th of July celebration, Bigfoot Days in Willow Creek, Sovereign Days for the Hoopa tribe, the Humboldt County Fair, and more. Voters' Choice Act specific events include our public hearing today on August 17th here at the Arcata City Hall Council Chambers.
Section 5, Vote Centers. Requirements and consideration. The Voters' Choice Act voting model requires that vote center locations be provided across the county, distance to provide one vote center for every 50,000 voters, 10 days before an election, and one vote center for every 10,000 voters, 3 days before an election. When possible, vote centers must additionally be near public transit routes, historically low vote-by-mail populations, language minority communities, voters with disabilities, communities with low household vehicle ownership, communities with low household incomes, and geographically isolated communities. Humboldt County has approximately 85,800 active voters, which requires the Office of Elections to have a minimum of 2 vote centers open for 10 days before the election, and an additional 7 vote centers open 3 days before the election. Vote centers will be open for 8 hours for each early day of voting from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. and from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. on election day. The Office of Elections employed sitting software to determine recommended placement for vote centers based on the required considerations. Sitting software recommends the following locations for vote centers: Hoopa, McKinleyville, Arcata, Eureka, Fortuna, and Garberville. Due to high voter populations and for voter convenience, the Office of Election will provide 12 vote centers across Humboldt County, including 1 vote center open for 29 days before the election, and 2 additional vote centers 10 days before the election, and 7 additional vote centers for 3 days before the election. And 9 additional vote centers 3 days before the election. The vote center open for 29 days before the election will be the office, Vote centers open 29 days before the election. The Office of Elections will provide 1 vote center for 29 days before Election Day and on Election Day at the Office of Elections front office, located at 2426 6th Street in Eureka. Vote centers open for 10 days before the election. The Office of Elections will provide 2 vote centers for 10 days before and on Election Day. These locations will be the Arcata Community Center, the Fortuna Veterans Memorial Building. Vote centers open for 3 days before the election.
I'm sorry, that was 7.
Yeah, I know, it's okay. Vote centers open for 3 days before the election. The Office of Elections will provide 7 vote centers for 3 days before the election and on Election Day. These locations are Arcata High School, College of the Redwoods, the Humboldt County Office of Elections Annex, the Jefferson Community Center, the Fortuna River Lodge, McKinleyville Union Middle School, and Prash Hall. Vote centers open for Election Day only. The Office of Elections will provide 3 vote centers on Election Day. These locations are the Hoopa Neighborhood Facility, the County Fairgrounds in Ferndale, and the Garberville Redwood Playhouse. For alternate vote centers, the Office of Election has secured additional backup vote centers that will be used in the event that a vote center becomes unavailable. These locations are Azalea Hall, the Arcata Veterans Memorial Building, the Eureka Veterans Memorial Building. Staffing. Vote centers will be staffed with 7 staff members, including a team leader, voting equipment technician, and support team members. Staff members will participate in instructional voting equipment and election management software training. Design and layout. Vote centers will be designed to provide voters with the most accessible, private, and independent voting experience possible. Voting station and supplies will be strategically placed to provide a smooth flow through the voting area and clearly marked. Accessibility aids and services will be clearly communicated by vote center staff and posted signage. Although specific vote center design and layout will vary slightly from one location to another, see Appendix D provides an ideal polling place design used to guide a vote center setup. Each vote center will receive an accessibility guide to ensure vote centers are set up properly. Security and contingency plans. The Office of Election has established security and contingency procedures to ensure continuity of vote center activities in the most secure manner possible. Ensuring security of voting. The Office of Elections is committed to ensuring the integrity and security of elections in Humboldt County. The Office of Elections employs process and procedure standards that stringently follow federal and state laws to administer secure, fair, and accurate elections in the most time and cost-efficient manner. Vote center staff training. Vote center staff will receive instructional voting equipment and election management software training. Vote center access to election management software. Vote center staff will use laptops, to utilize limited access versions of the election information management software, IEMS Lite, used at the Office of Elections for voter registration. Verifying voter activity via the Secretary of State's secure VoteCal database, and issuing ballots. Laptops will be connected to the internet using secure technology compliant with the California Code of Regulations, Section 20158. Voting equipment is a closed system. Heart Verity voting equipment is a paper-based voting system that is never connected to the internet. Voting equipment chain of custody. The chain of custody refers to keeping complete control of all equipment from the time it has been set for an election until it has been returned to the Office of Election and its votes recorded. Equipment. Security seals will be affixed to voting equipment at the time it is programmed for an election, and supply boxes containing ballots and voter rosters. Voting equipment will have affixed security seals whenever the polls are suspended or closed. Security seal logs shall be maintained of the serially numbered seals. Security seals will be verified and logged at each handoff point along the chain of custody. Voting equipment containing vote counts and voted ballots will be transported securely to the Office of Elections by 2 elections officials. Vote center design. Vote centers will be designed to ensure voting equipment is always in the sightline of staff. Live voting equipment will never be left unattended. Voting equipment battery backup. Voting equipment either has an internal battery backup or will be sent to vote centers with an uninterrupted power source to ensure continuity of voting in the event of a power outage. On-call voting equipment troubleshooting. The Office of Elections will provide real-time troubleshooting support to vote centers to ensure the integrity and continuity of voting equipment performance. Voting equipment incident reports. Vote center staff will report voting equipment incidents to the Office of Elections immediately and complete forms documenting the incident in detail. Prevention measures and potential disruptions. Vote center staff will receive training and guidance on how to respond to potential disruptions, natural disasters, emergency situations, including but not limited to fires prior to or on voting days, earthquakes prior to or on voting days, planned or unplanned power outages, life-threatening emergencies at vote centers, and voter intimidation. Alternative vote center locations will be identified and reserved in the event that a primary vote center becomes unusable. Vote center staff will have an emergency phone line to the Office of Elections in the event of an emergency. A full description of potential disruptions and responses is attached as Appendix E.
Section 6, ballot drop boxes. Requirements and considerations. The Voters' Choice Act voting model requires that official ballot drop box locations be provided across the county, distanced to provide 1 ballot drop box for every 15,000 voters. Secure, accessible, and locked ballot drop-off boxes must be placed and ready to receive voted ballots 28 days prior to an election. A minimum of 1 ballot drop-off box must be open for 12 hours each day. When possible, boxes must additionally be near public transportation routes, historically low vote-by-mail populations, language minority communities, voters with disability, communities with low household vehicle ownership, communities with low household incomes, and geographically isolated communities. Humboldt County has approximately 85,800 active voters, which requires the Office of Elections to have a minimum of 6 ballot drop-off boxes, and 1 of these ballot drop-off boxes must be open for 12 hours a day for the 28 days before the election. The Office of Elections employed citing software to determine recommended placement for the ballot drop-off boxes based on the required considerations. Recommended locations for the ballots drop-off boxes include Willow Creek, McKinleyville, Arcata, Eureka, Fortuna, Garberville. The ballot drop box locations. Due to the rain and the rural positioning of many communities in Humboldt County, the Office of Elections will provide 11 drop-off box locations across Humboldt County as follows. Arcata, 2 locations. Eureka, 2 locations. Fortuna, McKinleyville, 2 locations. Redway, Trinidad, Willow Creek. The Humboldt County Office of Elections has partnered with local store chains to provide ballot drop-off locations in secure and accessible locations. All ballot drop-off boxes will be open for at least 12 hours a day. Willow Creek, Ray's Food Place, Trinidad, Murphy's Market, McKinleyville, Ace Hardware, and Murphy's Market. Arcata, Murphy's Market in Bayside and Murphy's Market on Westwood. Eureka, the Office of Elections, our front office, Murphy's Market on Walnut Drive. Fortuna, Ray's Food Place on Main Street, and Redway, Shop Smart on Redwood Drive. Section 7, Remote Accessible Vote by Mail. The Remote Accessible Vote by Mail, RAVBM, is an accessible and secure web-based system that enables voters to access, mark, and print ballot materials to assist in their voting experience. The RAVBM enables voters with disabilities, many of whom often rely on others to assist them in reading and marking their ballot, to cast their vote privately and independently from home. RAVBM voting is available to all voters for all elections. Ballots may be returned in person or mailed to the Office of Elections. RAVBM is not internet voting. Humboldt County uses Democracy Live software to operate our RAVBM, which also allows all voters access to their county voter information guide.
Cost analysis and resource allocation, Section 8. Resources allocated for voter education and outreach. We are currently developing budget allocations, and they'll be available in the next draft. Short-term and long-term savings. The Humboldt County Office of Elections determined that the cost will exceed savings upon initial implementation of the Voters' Choice Act. However, the Nevada County Elections Office predicts that over time, conducting elections in accordance with the VCA, the Voters' Choice Act, will encourage savings. This prediction is based on evidence from Colorado, which implemented a similar elections model. According to a report published by the Pew Charitable Trusts, election costs declined 40% on average after the implementation of Colorado's Voters Access and Modernization Elections Act of 2013. Estimated short-term costs include purchasing ballot on-demand printers for all vote centers that will enable staff to print all ballot types within the county for that election. Included in short-term costs are the purchasing of laptop computers and monitors for vote center staff to have the ability to process voters directly in the election management system. Additional short-term costs include, but are not limited to, secure internet connections at all vote centers, extensive training for staff, purchasing of ballot drop boxes, and facility rentals. Anticipated long-term savings include decreased costs from equipment, including the purchasing of new equipment and equipment maintenance, ballot printing, and labor.
Section 9, Appendices. Appendix A, Voter Accessibility Advisory Committee Overview and Purpose. What is the Voter Accessibility Advisory Committee, or VAC? The Voter Accessibility Advisory Committee, or VAC, is an advisory committee comprised of local government and local community members. The purpose of the Humboldt VAC is to assist the Office of Elections in ensuring vote centers meet accessibility guidelines determined by the Secretary of State. Mission statement. The Voter Accessibility Advisory Committee of Humboldt County is an advisory committee that seeks to set reasonable, achievable goals for making vote centers within the County of Humboldt accessible to all voters, to establish realistic timelines for identifying accessibility issues and developing mitigation measures to secure necessary funding to achieve identified goals, and to provide ongoing review of polling places. What is the role of the Voting Accessibility Advisory Committee? The members of the VAC meet periodically to review site accessibility surveys conducted by the Office of Elections, advising county elections officials on the placement of voting equipment, recognition of barriers to participation by elderly voters and voters with disabilities, and mechanisms to eliminate or mitigate the impact of these barriers to accessibility. Members additionally evaluate inaccessible vote centers or voting areas to determine if application of specific temporary modifying measures would make the vote center accessible. Background summary. For decades, the Office of Elections has reviewed facilities for accessibility and submitted survey reports to the VAC advisory group for input. In 2005, the Office of Elections developed a 4-year ADA compliance plan based on a randomly selected survey review by Tri-County Independent Living Incorporated. In 2013, the Office of Elections spearheaded a comprehensive facility review to update usability statutes and mitigation necessary for use. In recent years, several facilities notified the Office of Elections that they could no longer serve the community as facilities to voters. The Office of Elections continues to research potential replacement facilities in these communities and conducted many surveys for accessibility. These surveys are the immediate focus of the VAC. Appendix B, Language Accessibility Advisory Committee Overview and Purpose. What is a Language Accessibility Advisory Committee, or LAC? The Language Accessibility Advisory Committee is an advisory committee comprised of local government and local community members. The purpose of the Humboldt LAC is to assist the Office of Elections in ensuring voting materials meet accessibility guidelines determined by the U.S. Department of Justice and Secretary of State. Mission Statement. The LAC of Humboldt County is an advisory committee that seeks to set reasonable, achievable goals for making voting materials within Humboldt County accessible to all voters, establish realistic timelines for identifying accessibility issues, and developing mitigation measures to secure funding to achieve identified goals. What is the role of Language Accessibility Advisory Committee? Members of the LAC meet periodically to provide feedback on voter outreach materials, election materials, online materials, messaging strategies, outreach opportunities, and bilingual poll worker recruitment. Members of the LAC must have either a demonstrated knowledge of a language spoken by 3% or more of Humboldt County's voting age population, or experience working with communities who speak a covered language. Background summary. In 1975, U.S. Congress added Section 203, Language Minority Citizens, to the Voting Rights Act to protect the voting rights of language minority Americans. See Section 203. Section 203 requires that registration or voting notices, forms, instructions, assistance, or other materials or information relating to the electoral process, including ballots, be provided to voters in jurisdictions or political subdivisions that meet certain criteria. Enacted in 1994, California Elections Code Section 14201 requires that when 3% or more of a voting age population of a jurisdiction or political subdivision are language minority citizens, the elections official shall provide facsimile copies of ballot measures and ballot instructions printed in Spanish or other applicable languages. In 2016, SB 450 was passed by California legislature, requiring counties participating in the California Voters' Choice Act election model to establish a Language Accessibility Advisory Committee before an election can be held. Counties not participating in VCA elections may opt to form a LAC.
Appendix C is the series of maps used for criteria for citing vote centers and ballot drop-off locations. They include public transit stops, vote-by-mail usage, population centers, language minority communities, disability communities, low vehicle ownership, and population and poverty.
Appendix D. Appendix C is a graphics of the vote center design and layout. This is a possible layout for one of the locations that we're going to have a 10-day vote center at. This is the Fortuna Veterans Memorial Building. It's not necessarily going to be this layout, but this is a possibility of a layout. As you walk in, you can see there is a greeter there, and there is a table that is staffed at all times to have the vote by mail drop-off ballot box there. And then as you walk into the actual main room, then you'll be greeted by staff who will look you up on the information on the laptops, and then make sure that your ballot is printed to you. Or if necessary, they will direct you down to the Verity Touch Writer, accessible ballot marking devices, where you can either mark the device yourself, or use various manners of marking the device and then have it printed there. And then, or you can take the printed ballot that you've received from the original section there and go over to the polling booths, mark your ballot yourself, and then you'll end up at the ballot scanner, whether you have a ballot that's been printed off with the touch writer, or from a ballot that you've marked yourself. You take that to the scanner at the end, and then your ballot is scanned into the scanner at that point, and then you exit out, nice and roundabout. Each vote center shall have at least 3 voting machines that are accessible to voters with disabilities.
Appendix E, potential disruptions and responses. The Office of Elections provides instructional training and written procedures to guide vote center staff in the event of an emergency. In the event a vote center becomes non-operational due to fire, earthquake, or power outage, the Office of Elections will contact the vote center staff affected. The vote center team leader will contact remaining team members in real time to provide information about work assignments, relocations, and any other changes or important information about their assignment, team, and vote center. Non-operational due to fire. If a fire makes a vote center inaccessible, an alternate vote center will be assigned. If possible, signage will be placed outside of the non-operational vote center to notify voters of the location change. If the fire occurs prior to voting beginning, the Office of Elections will contact the team leader of the vote centers affected to provide information about the alternate vote center and make arrangements for voting equipment, ballots, and supplies to be delivered to the alternate vote center location. The vote center team leader will contact remaining team members in real time to provide information about work assignments, relocations, and any other changes or important information about their assignment, team, and vote center. The Office of Elections will provide press releases to the public for any changes in vote center locations and how to access voting services. If a fire occurs during voting days, put safety first. Contact 911 first, then contact the Office of Elections immediately on the emergency hotline. If the vote center must be evacuated, the vote center team leader will work with emergency personnel to ensure everyone gets out of the facility safely. If there is no imminent danger to personal safety, the team leader should attempt to protect the integrity of the voting process, voting equipment, and voting materials to the extent possible by doing the following. Call the Office of Elections on the emergency hotline for immediate instructions. Record the public counter numbers on each voting machine. Unplug voting machines and move them to a safe location. Gather and secure the ballot box containing voted ballots, rosters, binders, team binder, and other equipment and move it to a safe location. If possible, all material should be removed in teams of 2. Document the event. If it is safe to do so, a member of the leadership team should complete an accident incident report documenting the event. If any voting equipment was damaged, complete a voting equipment incident report form documenting any damage.
Non-operational due to an earthquake. If an earthquake occurs and makes a vote center inaccessible, an alternate vote center will be assigned. If possible, signage will be placed outside the non-operational vote center to notify voters of location changes. If the earthquake occurs prior to a voting beginning, The Office of Elections will contact the team leader of the vote centers affected to provide information about the alternative vote center and make arrangements for voting equipment, ballots, and supplies to be delivered to the alternate vote center locations. The vote center team leader will contact remaining team members in real time to provide information about work assignments, relocations, and any other changes or important information about their assignment, team, and vote center. The Office of Elections will provide press releases to the public for any changes in the vote center locations and how to access voting services. If an earthquake occurs during voting, If an earthquake occurs during voting days, put safety first. Do not evaluate the effects of the earthquake on the facility unless it is safe to do so. If the earthquake causes injury or property damage, contact 911 first, then contact the Office of Elections immediately on the emergency hotline. If the vote center must be evacuated, the vote center team leader will work with emergency personnel to ensure everyone gets out of the facility safely. If there is no imminent danger to personal safety, the team leader should attempt to protect the integrity of the voting process, voting equipment, and voting materials to the extent possible by doing the following. Call the Office of Elections on the emergency hotline for immediate instructions. Record the public counter numbers on each voting machine. Unplug voting machines and move them to a safe location. Gather and secure the ballot box containing the voted ballots, rosters, binders, team binders, and other equipment, and move it to a safe location. And if possible, all materials should be removed in teams of 2. Document the event. If it is safe to do so, vote center team leaders will complete an accident incident report documenting the event. If any voting equipment was damaged, complete a voting equipment incident report form documenting any damage.
Unplanned power outage. If an unplanned power outage occurs, vote centers may remain open. Vote center teams would use emergency pre-printed ballots and have voters deposit them into the ballot box. Voting equipment, scan, touch writers, and ballot on demand have a 2-hour battery backup. Printers that serve with the touch writers and ballot on demand are connected to an uninterrupted power supply battery backup until a unit that provides 2 hours of uninterrupted power. A power outage occurs prior to voting beginning. The Office of Elections will contact the team leader of voter assistance centers affected to provide information about whether the vote center will remain open or be directed to an alternate location, and make arrangements for voting equipment, ballots, and supplies to be delivered to the alternate location or alternate vote center location. The Office of Elections may provide press releases to the public for any changes in vote center locations and how to access voting services. Power outage occurs during voting. If a power outage occurs during voting days, put safety first. If the power outage causes injury or property damage, contact 911 first, then contact the Office of Elections immediately on the emergency hotline. If no injuries or damage are caused by the power outage, contact law enforcement and non-emergency phone number, then the Office of Elections. Document the event. The vote center team leader will complete an incident or accident report documenting the event. If any voting equipment was damaged, complete a voting equipment incident report form documenting any damage. Planned public safety power shutoffs. If a planned public safety power shutoff, commonly known as PSPS, occurs, vote centers may remain open. Vote center teams would use emergency pre-printed ballots and have voters deposit them into the ballot box. Voting equipment, scan, touch writers, and ballot on demand have 2-hour battery backups. Printers that serve the touch writers and ballot on demand are connected to an uninterrupted power supply battery backup unit that provides 2 hours of uninterrupted power. The Office of Elections will contact the team leader of voter assistance centers affected to provide information about whether the vote center will remain open or be directed to an alternate center location, and make arrangements for voting equipment, ballots, and supplies to be delivered to the alternate vote center location. The Office of Elections will provide press releases to the public for any changes in vote center locations and how to access voting services.
Emergency at the Voter Assistance Center. Please put safety first. If a medical issue or life-threatening emergency occurs, or if de-escalation is unsuccessful, contact law enforcement at 911. Then contact the Office of Elections immediately on the emergency hotline to report the emergency. Vote Center team binders also include an emergency contact and resource list by geographical region. If the vote center must be evacuated, the vote center team leader will work with emergency personnel to ensure everyone gets out of the facility safely. If there is no imminent danger to personal safety, the team leader should attempt to protect the integrity of the voting process, voting equipment, and voting materials to the extent possible by doing the following. Call the Office of Elections on the emergency hotline for immediate instruction. Record the public counter number on each voting machine. Unplug voting machines and move them to a safe location. Gather and secure the ballot drop box containing voted ballots, roster binders, team binders, and other equipment and move it to a safe location. If possible, all materials should be removed in teams of 2. Inaccessible election night drop-off location. If an election night drop-off location becomes inaccessible and vote center teams cannot drop off ballots and voting equipment, the 2 team members transporting ballots and voting equipment should bring them directly to the Office of Elections. If an election night ballot drop-off location becomes inaccessible, contact the Office of Elections immediately on the election emergency hotline. Voter intimidation. Voter intimidation is illegal and a serious offense. It is a felony if any person makes use of or threatens to make use of any force, violence, or tactic of coercion or intimidation to compel any other person to vote or refrain from voting. Refrain from voting for any particular person or measure at any election, or because any person voted or refrained from voting at any election, or voted or refrained from voting for any particular person or measure. While acts of voter intimidation may happen in and around a voting center, immediate vicinity, they may occur anywhere. Examples of voter intimidation may include blocking access to vote centers, threatening criminal action against voters, presenting false information about voter eligibility requirements, including criminal consequences for voting, harassing or threatening behavior, including aggressive questioning of voters based on a person's race, gender identity, or aggressively questioning voters about their citizenship, criminal record, or other qualifications to vote, challenging voters' right to vote, presenting false information to voters about the voting process and requirements, including the ability to speak English or the need to present certain types of photo identification, assault, battery, threats of violence, or brandishing of weapons.
Security guards, law enforcement, and firearms. It is a felony for any person to possess a firearm at a voting location or in the immediate vicinity of a vote center. Similarly, it is illegal for any ununiformed peace officer, private guard, or security personnel, or any person who is wearing a uniform of a peace officer, guard, or security personnel from being stationed at or in the immediate vicinity of a voting location. Additionally, it is also a felony for any person or entity to hire or arrange for the prohibited activity in Elections Code Section 18544. Note, these prohibitions do not in any way prevent a law enforcement officer or an unarmed uniformed security guard from voting. Shirts, hats, or other displays that indicate a person is with election security or ballot security, or apparel or accessories with any semblance of a logo or display that might be confused with any private guard or security company or government agency are prohibited. This includes observers and anyone who is not there to vote. Election worker response to voter intimidation. If election workers observe voter intimidation at the vote center, contact law enforcement on a non-emergency phone number and then the Office of Elections. The vote center team leader will request the intimidator to leave the property. If the intimidator is a voter waiting to vote, inform the voter that if they do not stop intimidating voters, they will have to leave. Election worker response to escalation. puts safety first. If the situation escalates and de-escalation is unsuccessful, contact law enforcement at 911, then contact the Office of Elections immediately on the emergency hotline. Reporting voter intimidation. If voter intimidation occurs at the Voter Assistance Center, complete an incident report form providing as much detail as possible about the events that occurred. If possible, the team leader will take a picture of the completed incident report and email or text the report to the Office of Elections immediately. Incidents will be forwarded to the California Secretary of State. Appendix F. Budget and expected cost and savings. Budget, the current budget figures are in development and will be available on the next draft.
So that completes agenda item 3. Thank you for everyone for remaining with us. This is a long document, but we felt it necessary to go over all parts of it so that, we can be prepared with questions or clarification if needed. We're now going to move on to agenda item 4. That's oral and written public comment. Before we get into in-person and Zoom public comment, we did receive a fair amount of written public comment through our online EAP form. We would first like to thank the public for engaging in that public feedback. We really appreciate it. We did pull a few questions or topics that we would like to address. We won't be reading full written public comment, but we will be addressing some points that were brought up. So if Juan, you wanted to begin with addressing written public comment.
Yeah, so the comments were through our web portal and email, just giving us feedback on the EAP. No necessary, none of them were narratives that they communicated they wanted us to express at this point. One of the concerns, many individuals as well as the League of Women Voters are excited about the VCA and appreciate that voting will be more accessible to Humboldt's eligible voters. One of the concerns that was brought up was that there are currently no available in-person voting locations for the residents of Shelter Cove and its surrounding communities, Whitethorn, Bryceland, Salmon Creek, and Alder Point. Another concern is that the Voters' Choice Act will bring about electronic online voting, or that there will no longer be paper ballots. Concern 3 is that having vote centers located at schools will be dangerous for students. Concern 4 is that it's easier voter registration and vote centers will make it harder to ensure voter eligibility. I'll take the opportunity to respond to some of those. I think the folks that are excited, we're excited too. I think this is going to make voting more accessible for Humboldt County. We are looking into concern 1, which is voting for folks in Whitethorn, Bryceland, Salmon Creek, and Alder Point. We're always looking to expand how we can provide more options for folks in Southern Humboldt. Currently, a voting location, we don't have anything accessible at the moment, but we're exploring adding additional drop boxes in Southern Humboldt that'll help alleviate some of those concerns. The Voters' Choice Act will bring about electronic online voting, or that there will be no longer paper ballots. I don't see that happening in the future. Humboldt County uses a paper ballot system. Even our accessibility devices produce a paper ballot. We're big fans of that and the auditable paper trail that they leave. So the Voters' Choice Act doesn't speak to getting rid of paper ballots. Having vote centers located at schools will be dangerous for students. The Voters' Choice Act isn't, if anything, it's moving away from having schools be polling locations. We'll still have some, but they'll be more limited under the Voters' Choice Act. Easier voter registration at vote centers will make it harder to ensure voter eligibility. We have mechanisms at place, same-day voter registration, and voting 14 days prior to the election or sooner. We have mechanisms to ensure that voter eligibility is checked before a ballot's counted. And that concludes the the summary of a lot of the concerns that we received through our online portal.
Thank you, Juan. So to begin, we'll go ahead and invite anybody here at the council chambers to come up and make public comment. If anybody wanted to do so, now is your chance. I'm sorry, before we begin, we're going to give everyone, no, you can go ahead and come up. That's okay. I just wanted to note that we're going to give everyone in person and online 3 minutes to make their public comment. If you reach or approach the end of the 3 minutes, I'll go ahead and give you maybe like a 10 to 15 second heads up. And then we'll go ahead and we may respond to some of the public comments, or if, depending on what the feedback is, we may consider, some reasonable modifications to the EAP if that's what that's called for. But we'll go ahead and start.
Is it on? Or do I have to?
Is there a button at the base of the mic?
Button. Okay. I am Jessica Schlachter. I'm the co-president of the Humboldt County League of Women Voters. So we submitted a public comment, but I wanted to take an opportunity to speak here. The League of Women Voters of Humboldt County strongly supports the Voters' Choice Act and applauds the County Office of Elections for moving forward with its implementation. The League's mission promotes an engaged and informed electorate that participates in government. We believe that the VCA promotes that participation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. Oh, let me move this down for the shortness. I came to the elections office last year, and I observed with the two of you the signature verification process. I was concerned about something, and I'm hoping maybe this new program addressed it. So I was concerned that the political preference of the voter is on display while the signature is being verified. So I'd like to know if, like you said, Juan, if that's been addressed and if that's still a thing.
So we actually have been trying to work with the vendor to remove that from the SIG verification process. I'm not sure. I know that they're working on implementing changes. I don't think that's been included in the latest build, but there should be a couple more before March. So I'll stay in touch.
Interesting. Okay.
Thank you. Any more public comment?
Hi, I'm Paul Spencer. I'm an attorney with Disability Rights California in our voting rights practice group. Disability Rights California is the protection advocacy system for voters with disabilities in California. We submitted written comment, and I just wanted to kind of quickly go over some of the issues we saw with the EAP. So first off, the election administration plan is good, and this public hearing was really nice. It's really well done, so thank you for getting public input. Just one thing for the plan is, in our letter, we maybe suggested sort of moving around some of the items. But in particular is the executive summary is to maybe include more information about the Voters' Choice Act, the different public participation opportunities, also some of the maybe more obscure requirements that you're going to have to post the costs after elections online, that in 2 years, you're going to redo the plan, that even that the Secretary of State comes out with reports on the Voters' Choice Act counties. I think that's good stuff to put in the executive summary, because it's kind of hard to, it gets buried in the rest of the election administration plan, I think. DRC is excited to see more budget information in the amended election administration plan. That budget information is really important, we think, for assessing how well the county will be able to meet the education outreach requirements of the Voters' Choice Act. And in particular for voters with disabilities, DRC believes using all the different types of media required by the Voters' Choice Act is probably the best way to make sure that the message that the elections have changed are reaching voters with disabilities. In our experience, and as you know as election officials, it's pretty darn hard to get the public to realize something's different about the election. So the more media, the better. Also in the plan, if you included the vote center factors, all 15 of them, and listed them out, I think that's really helpful. That way the public doesn't have to go dig into the California election code. In the vote center layout map, which is good in the hearing, this is actually something that's not in our letter, but something to consider is In the past, for polling locations, you had one ballot marking device, but now you'll have 3, maybe more, is to really make sure that the cordage is not an accessibility barrier. We're seeing that a lot in other counties where the accessibility is really good. They have brand new equipment. They have more equipment than they're required to have, but how they did the power cords was an afterthought. And a lot of that comes down to like power draw and sockets, like really nerdy stuff like that. So, in other counties, there'll just be bundles of power cords underneath, which isn't, it's a clear accessibility barrier. It should be clear underneath. So I would recommend Velcro zip ties or some way to clean up the cords underneath. I know this might seem really nitpicky, but it's something that we're seeing in all the new VCA counties. So it's a big deal. The last thing is to consider the need for a mobile vote center. I like that you read some of the public comments, and one of them was, we don't have voting in a certain area. I know it's difficult to find accessible locations. One thing to consider for a mobile vote center is you can have a one-day pop-up location. So maybe there is an accessible location that's not willing to be open for 4 to 10 days, but they might be willing to be open for one day. But otherwise, thank you. This has been a good hearing, and thanks for giving me an opportunity to speak.
Thank you. All right, with that, I'm going to ask if anybody else in person would like to make another public comment before we move to Zoom. Thank you. All right. So for those, so I guess this is my call. For anybody currently on Zoom, if you would like to make a public comment, you can go ahead and raise your hand now. I will unmute you, and you will have the same 3 minutes to make a public comment. All right, so we're going to begin on Zoom with Ash. All right, Ash, you should be good to go.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I was just wanting to see if I could clear some misconception or someone that's curious up about given federally only U.S. citizens can legally vote, but in California it's illegal to check ID. How are possible non or undocumented voters removed from the vote count? And then I had one other question also. It's given the problem of ballot harvesting demonstrated in the 2000 Mules documentary, are there any safeguards in place for that, camera on
Ash, we're going to have to limit the comment to the Voters' Choice Act. And so anything tied to the process that we're talking about, I'd be happy to go over a lot of this stuff with you offline or at a separate time.
And the Voters' Choice Act talks about the voters' drop boxes, and that's what I'm asking a question about. Is,
okay. Yeah.
Is there any surveillance of the drop boxes to document possible, suspicious large drops by people?
There aren't any surveillance at the moment. The most of the drop boxes are located inside local businesses that are staffed during the time that they're open. Yeah.
I believe he. Well, I guess the voter registration comment is that.
Oh. Yeah, again, the voter registration comment isn't subject to, the VCA isn't changing how we process voter registration or voting. The voter registration process is the process by which non-eligible folks get weeded out of the voting process. And so in order to fully register to vote in California, we need certain documents that'll verify eligibility. And so we'll need a driver's license or a social security number.
All right. So with that, I guess I can I'll make a second call for anybody on Zoom to make any final comments. You can go ahead and raise your hands if you were interested. Okay. So with that completes the review of the EAP and our public comment period. I would like to thank everybody for attending this meeting this evening and for your interest in this process. This this document wouldn't be available without some really strong public feedback, and we hope to receive more here in the future. So this is the first draft of this EAP. After this meeting, we'll make some adjustments to it as necessary, and there will be a second draft available on our website. And for those of you who haven't seen it, it's humboldtgov.org/elections. That is where you'll be able to view the amended EAP, as well as make online public comment. Is there anything else that I wanted to wrap up with? No? Okay. Well,
Yeah, we're just thanking everyone for coming and participating.
Yeah.
It can be a boring process, but it's really important to get public feedback in it. We're always trying to do the best that we can in terms of capturing every perspective, but being human, we're limited in that. And so any feedback we get is critical, because that's a point of view we don't have. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. And with that, this meeting is adjourned.